It has been a long time since there's been this much action. One sad note in all this, of course, is the absence of one name. Our job is to choose whom we think can be the most effective. It's an interesting and exciting race, and all we have to do is vote. So let's do it, and let's make it a big one. We pray that is so. This is Bob Harrington.
Washington moves fast, policies shift overnight, and yet here in our corner of Vermont, the real impact often comes at the speed of town meetings and Main Street conversations. Politics aren't just about headlines and sound bites. It's about people, communities, and the choices that shape our lives. They say all politics is local, but in a nation this divided, what does that actually mean? We're not here for spin. We're here for clarity, for straight answers, for the kind of talk you'd expect over a cup of coffee at the local diner, not in the halls of Congress. This is Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast.
4 a.m. Boom. I don't know if that pop-up comes up anymore. There you go.
It does.
I will disappear. Have a great show. And Matt, when you're ready, I'll give you your 5, 4, 3.
Welcome back to the Chamber Telecast, a civic conversation series produced by the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce, over with our pals, the Catamount Access Television crew. Today, we're honored to be joined by Vermont Attorney General Charity Clark, who has emerged as a leading voice defending our state's values and institutions. Since taking office, Attorney General Clark has joined more than 24 multi-state lawsuits challenging a range of federal overreach, from freezes on education funding and cuts to AmeriCorps grants, to attacks on FEMA, disaster preparedness, birthright citizenship, and immigration protections. Most recently, her office filed a lawsuit to block the Trump administration from dismantling AmeriCorps, which had supported hundreds of Vermonters in service roles across the state. With deep legal acumen and a commitment to constitutional integrity, she has also taken a stand on behalf of Vermonters suing to defend Head Start, or the act of it, FEMA's BRIC grants, and due process protections and immigration. So today we'll explore a lot of her insights. We're very interested to have this conversation with the Attorney General, helping us navigate these challenges, protect our communities, and hopefully preserve the rule of law. So I want to welcome you, Attorney General Clark. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
So let's begin. I want to begin a little bit different today than we have in the past, although we will get that question in somewhere there. But I want to begin with, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get here? We didn't read a whole lot of your biography in the beginning, so I think it would just be helpful for our audience to know, how do you become the Vermont Attorney General, and what was the path that got you here?
Well, I grew up in Bennington County, and my family has lived in Vermont for many generations. I became interested in politics when I was a little kid because Madeline Kunin was governor, and she was the first woman governor, and so far only woman governor of Vermont. She came to Manchester on Green Up Day and made a big impression on me. And from there, I ran for student body president and ran for offices where I could, and got involved in politics. Political science is one of my majors. I have been thinking like a political science during the past 7 months because I think President Trump is such a curiosity that he really has made me, I feel like I've intellectualized some of what he has done as a student almost. I really was kind of the catalyst to my path. I worked for Governor Dean. And when I worked in the Governor Dean's office, I could see what an impact the lawyers working for the state made. And eventually, after private practice, made my way to the Attorney General's office. So when I ran for Attorney General, I'd already been working in the office for almost 8 years, going on 8 years. So that was the path. It's like that combination of being inspired by Vermont icons and just having a real commitment to the state, and found my way here. It's now 2.5 years that I've been Attorney General. So it's been a very gratifying journey, and the past 7 months have been a wild ride in particular.
I bet. I so appreciate you talking about, I kind of think of, there are two camps of people when we look at the current administration, the people that are just so wrapped up in the emotion of it, right? And every day seems to be a battle to kind of go to work and just pretend like things are normal. And then to me, and you kind of echo this, students and observing kind of just this fascinating moment in history. Yes, we have to deal with and do the things that we need to do, including, and we'll get into some of the work that you've done, but also just like, man, we're in history right now. And so some of us history nerds are kind of like taking a step back, being like, this is fascinating, taken from a whole poli-sci perspective. So I appreciate you bring that to the forefront, that there's kind of two, and we tend to be married to one another too, that, some of us are just kind of sitting there observing the other significant other might be pulling their hair out at dinner table.
I would say that it's easier to look at the kind of political science side of things when you are grounded in this foundation of a belief in our country. Mm. And I think that when I speak to groups, which I do a lot now, I go to forums and speak to community groups about the work that my office is doing during this time in history. And I hear all the time, like, talking to me is so reassuring, but I think part of that comes from this just foundational belief that I have and hope that I have for our country. I consider myself to be a patriot, and feel really strongly that I just have a lot of fundamental faith that our country is going to be okay. This is a test we're going to pass, I think, and it's definitely going to be a bumpy journey, but I think that it helps to have that foundational belief as I do the work I do.
That's great. You might be the first person we've interviewed to start with optimism. Usually we kind of pull it out of them at the end. So I think we're heading in the right direction with this interview. But we have to get to the question, of course, that we ask all of the people that we get on the show. What did you have for breakfast today, Charity? And what do you think it says about you and who you are as a person, as an attorney general, as a patriot?
Breakfast. I had a banana wild blueberry protein smoothie and a piece of wheat toast. And what that says about me is I was raised by crunchy granolas who liked healthy food, and that I am always trying to pack a lot in. So a smoothie is a great way to have a quick breakfast because it doesn't involve a lot of chewing. So I read the newspapers and eat as quick as I can, and hopefully I've either gone for a hike in the morning or I've gone on the exercise bike or something to get a little exercise before work, or cross country. Sometimes I go skiing before work sometimes. And I have my quick breakfast and I'm on my way. I'm a busy lady and I'm from Vermont. I guess that's what it says about me.
Well, packed a lot in you have. And so we do want to hop right into a lot of the things. And we'll start with those 24 lawsuits, from education funding freezes to the AmeriCorps cuts just recent. What do these escalating legal challenges reveal about the federal executive's approach to power? We'll frame it up as approach to power and go from there.
Well, I should start by just orienting your listeners or viewers who might not be familiar with why is the Attorney General involved. And that is that of course, the president was elected and has a right to install his vision for the country in place, but he doesn't have the right to violate our Constitution or federal laws. So when he does, as the lawyer to the state of Vermont, as an entity, I can bring a lawsuit, and I have up 26 times now. So that is how I have been involved. What I would see, or what I've observed now, the trends over the past few months, especially looking in particular through the lens of these lawsuits, is that the president is trying to consolidate power in himself. Conveniently, a way of doing that is to diminish the power of the federal government as an entity. And so he has, saying that he's trying to save money or do some other good thing, he is trying to reduce the size and power of the federal government. He also is trying to kind of challenge or diminish the power of other powerful entities like Harvard or the states, or hospitals, other places that people look to and think, here's a powerful entity. The Congress, the courts, he's always trying to consolidate power in himself. This is a little unnerving to watch, but I also believe the structure of our country was built for this very thing. He could have tried some other nefarious plan, but this is the one the founding fathers literally foresee. was an overemphasis of power, an over concentration of power in one entity. So our systems, I think, so far are working, and we'll continue to see if that is the case. I hope, and I hope they do, and I believe they will hold up over the years.
Okay, so give us a little crash course. How do you file a lawsuit against a sitting president? But we, I'd love to, just for our viewers, even for my own edification, what is the kind of the prep work, the research work, and then where do you actually file this, and how does it kind of go up the flagpoles per se?
So we have a coalition of attorneys general, and once in a while, there are a couple of governors who used to be attorneys general who don't have Democratic attorneys general. They have Republican attorneys general who aren't as excited to be bringing lawsuits like this. So there's a coalition. So far, only Democratic attorney generals are in that coalition. And we usually will bring these lawsuits together, not all of us at once. Sometimes a certain state isn't able to bring a lawsuit because they lack something called standing. Standing means that you are a party who's been harmed, and therefore you can bring a lawsuit. So, if someone you've never heard of got hit by a car, you wouldn't be able to sue the person who hit them, right? You're not the person who's supposed to sue. So sometimes states aren't there for that reason, or they might have some other reason why they're not there. But we have staff members who coordinate and work together on developing the theories of the case, what part of the Constitution has been violated, what law has been violated. And then we're working together to find out what are the best facts that we can present to establish that we have standing, or, as we've seen many times, to establish that there is some irreparable harm that's going to take place unless the court immediately intervenes, rather than waiting for the, no doubt, years it would take for the lawsuit to end. So those are called preliminary injunctions, and you will see that we have gotten those in several cases. One of the facts that I should mention at this point in time is Vermont is the smallest Democratic Attorney's General office. Most of the states are much bigger than Vermont, of course, so not surprisingly, we have a much smaller office. So far, we have not led on any of the actual lawsuits, although we have on some of the friend of the court brief work that we've done. So we are collaborating with other states. We're never out there by ourselves, and that is really, really helpful. It saves a lot of time and money, and I think also a unified voice acting together, as we have done, I think is very powerful and persuasive to the courts. Addressing your question about where we file, you will see that we frequently are filing in states that belong to particular appeals circuits. So the country is divided into circuits, circuit courts of appeal, and some of them we think are going to be more favorable to us. So of course we want to sue in those places. So you will frequently see cases that we file in Rhode Island or in Massachusetts, which are in the First Circuit, sometimes out west. We'll see things in the Ninth Circuit. So that's really, again, this is just a curiosity. It's kind of an interesting point I wanted to mention. And then the AGs, I mean, I know this sounds kind of Pollyanna, but we're really all friends with each other. Can I tell you, as an example of something that has delighted me, the AG of Hawaii is this wonderful woman. And you know how someone texts you something and you respond with a thumbs up? She doesn't respond with a thumbs up. She responds with like the hang 10 sign because she's from Hawaii. And delights me every time. We all get along really well. And I think it makes the work easy because we already have relationships that we have forged. This is also true, by the way, for a lot of the Republican AGs, but it makes our job a lot easier, I think, to have those relationships.
Well, and to have a sister AG office in Hawaii, maybe that, we can trade some trips and ski.
We joke about that, but I always say I already live in the best place. I don't need to go to Hawaii.
All right. Talking about lawsuits and kind of hooking your proverbial kite to some other great states. You recently did that with your AmeriCorps funding in Vermont and joining a lawsuit defending that. And really, when we think about AmeriCorps, and we've had some great AmeriCorps vistas in Bennington County, and I'm sure throughout the whole state, but you're talking about youth service, environmental restoration, volunteer leadership, some real great core American values there. How crucial is AmeriCorps when it comes to rural communities like Vermont, and why does it merit that legal defense?
So something to think about is, which is interesting. We care so much about the harms being done as a result of some of these actions. But I want to address two things. One is the harm, but also the legal underpinnings. You know, sometimes someone can do something that harms Vermont, and they didn't break the law. They didn't break the Constitution, and we just have to live with it. So while that's important to emphasize, really the reason why I'm bringing these lawsuits is because that's the hook. They broke the law or they violated the Constitution. When it comes to something like Head Start, which is one of many, many, you know, federally funded congressional programs that have been put into place that have been jeopardized by the Trump administration. I mean, I think everybody knows of someone who is a current or former AmeriCorps volunteer. I think that's what they refer to them as, volunteers. So these are so many great programs that we benefit from. And keep in mind, these are our tax dollars coming back to us. You know, we all pay taxes, right? We pay our federal taxes, and they come back to us in the forms of these programs. So this is us benefiting from our own money. And critically, Congress gets to decide how to spend the taxpayers' dollars. This is in the Constitution. It is not up for debate. It is not a question. It is really written in stone. And so anytime a presidential administration wants to kind of fiddle with things and change things, there's going to be a problem because it is Congress who gets to decide. Now, Congress could change their mind and do something that we don't like, and well, it's their job to spend the money, but it isn't the president's job, and that's why we got involved.
Yeah. You mentioned Head Start as well. And so let's go down that path too. You know, you are also have joined a suit opposing federal rules restricting access to Head Start. And that's obviously a major agency in Bennington, but also throughout the state. Go to the end user on this for both, you know, a little bit of AmeriCorps, but definitely Head Start. How does that impact Vermont families? Like if it were to stop and you know, and we would lose out on Head Start, what does that look like for Vermont families?
I mean, we have been a part of a conversation in Vermont recently about childcare because the legislature passed this amazing sweeping childcare bill. Although, frankly, previously, I think there was a lot of attention paid to it here. We're lucky to live in Vermont, but that was quite a accomplishment here in Vermont. And we all know how critical childcare is to allow people to go to work and to enable businesses to have workers. You know, that's just a part of the ecosystem we have of our economy. Head Start is critically important, especially in some of our rural areas in Vermont. And we, you know, this repeatedly happens, but certainly when the threat to Head Start occurred, we received calls from people in those communities and who work at Head Start or who benefited from Head Start calling and saying, you have to do something, you have to help us. I think it's just shocking it's such a great program because it literally enables people to go to work. And something to think that you're just scratching your head is sometimes people who are conservative are reluctant to extend social service benefits to people because they want them to be working. It's like, well, this enables people to go to work when they have childcare. So I think that one, it really, as a mom, it really resonated with me. As someone who grew up in a rural area, it really resonated with me. I will say there are many, many programs like Head Start, like AmeriCorps that have touched, you know, my desk this past 7 months because we have had to get involved in cases to try to preserve those programs.
So get into the head of the Trump administration. To me, it's like there's so many other things that he and his administration, and even conservatives, could go after that, or, you know, I think we all wrestle with. But it seems like he's going after things. We think of the AmeriCorps, we think of Head Start, we even think of, you know, kind of the FEMA funding. We want to touch on a little bit here, especially with how much it impacted the recent flood recovery in Vermont. Why? Like, is it a little bit of the social services part? You know, I can understand. I've heard that argument before that we're giving too much and it's a free ride to people and all this kind of stuff. But as a poli-sci student and an observer, what's your sense of, like, if you had to debate the other side, what's their argument?
So I have thought about this a lot. I mean, I think one of the things I already mentioned, which is Donald Trump is trying to consolidate power in the presidency. I also think he is a businessman, and he is trying to operate the government like a business and do what he has been successful at doing, which is making money. And he's not making money, he's saving money. So he's kind of making money for the government by reducing the programs. But of course, you can't run the government like a business. The government isn't designed to be a business. A business is designed to make money for shareholders and investors, and a government is like a completely different entity. It's a pact we all make with each other that we're going to have rules that we follow, and we're going to pool our resources for a greater collective good. It's not going to work. So I think those are a couple of things going on. We also have seen him use his power to exact punishment against his enemies, which is something that we've seen him repeatedly do. I also think we can look to his slogan, "Make America Great Again," right? And he wants to go back to another time. So sometimes he does things that I think don't really make sense other than they evoke some past, when things were great for certain people. I'm thinking especially of his real commitment to fossil fuels and trying to reduce investments in the future of energy, which is totally fascinating. So one of the things we've seen is a commitment to, going back in time, if you will, to an era when fossil fuels were the norm and when America had a lot to gain from using fossil fuels, and a peculiar abandonment of sort of the future of energy, which is weird because he's so interested in other technological futures, if you will, but not in, solar and wind, all the other things that we would associate with being on the future. Especially as a businessman, you'd think he would want to be investing in that stuff. I don't know. I'm trying to psychoanalyze this mysterious man, but those are a few things I've thought about when I've wondered to myself, like, what is really going on here? And those are some of the things that I've thought about, so I'll mention them.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe the $1 million questions, I think there's real concern over Head Start. I think that's going to hit many Vermonters, kind of day to day and that sort of thing. But I think there really is a concern when we see it splashed across the headlines around ICE, around immigration and deportations. And obviously we've had a couple of those here in Vermont. So federal policy currently is targeting asylum seekers, student visas, enforcing arrests outside immigration courts. What are you seeing in Vermont? ICE activity, due process issues, and what's your office currently doing about it? Give us some overview, Attorney General, around the safety net and the constraints that we have here in Vermont that doesn't allow or might allow the federal government to come in here and take people away.
Yeah, it's been tricky for us because immigration is a federal issue. And so while many of these other areas, a lot of Vermonters feel helpless, I don't feel helpless because I was given the gift of having this role to play. But when it comes to immigration, there is a lot less that I can do because it truly is a federal issue. It's not something that the state oversees. So we have managed to, try to play a role where we can. One is we created a Know Your Rights guide, and that is a guide that's available on our social media channels and on our website that just explains basic rights to not only people who may find themselves interacting with immigration officials, but also friends and neighbors of those people who can have that awareness about what the rights really are. In addition, we have signed on to what are called friend of the court briefs, or amicus briefs, if you want to say it in Latin to be fancy. Those are briefs that we file in support of somebody else's lawsuit. We're not a party who could sue. We're not involved in the case, but we might say, hey, Vermont actually would be impacted by this, or Vermont, has a voice that should be heard here, and we will file those amicus briefs. We've done that before. We also have urged Congress to pass a law that would require immigration officials to not wear masks. That is something that's been very unnerving and feels unnecessary here in Vermont. And we, of course, have tried to get involved in those cases where the Trump administration is trying to create some sort of a necessity to access a grant that the state performs some immigration related role. Our role when it comes to public safety is public safety, keeping people safe. Sometimes that conflicts with the role of immigration officials. It's not keeping people safe if they're afraid to report a crime because they're worried about someone interfering or, getting involved with their immigration case or what have you. So those are some of the ways that we've gotten involved, but it has been kind of an area of frustration, and people are very nervous and want to be reassured. And it's frustrating for me because it really isn't an area that the state government has a lot of authority over.
Well, and it's why we have shows like this. I think it's very important to know that what is really within your control, and then kind of on the peripheral, what's in your control. And so I think, it's just helpful for us to understand, if not you, then it's our national representatives and senators that can aid to that. Right. We've been talking about the lawsuits that you brought against that, and I really want to kind of round that out today with really the defining of presidential power, where its limits lie. I think you've been doing a really epic effort to find that out, and we mentioned it in the beginning of the interview. So I'd love to circle back to that from your perspective. Why is that so central right now? Where presidential power starts, where does it end? And what does this mean for Vermont's future? And quite frankly, for the country's future?
Yeah, you cut to it. It really is, quite frankly, for the country's future. We have a system of laws in this country. We have a civics, a system of government, and it's easy to take it for granted, but it's actually incredibly special, unique, and has inspired other countries to reshape themselves after us. We currently have a president who's interested in reshaping this country and slowly gaining more power and authority for himself in the executive branch. But we have 3 branches of government for a reason. We also have a federal system, meaning we have sovereign states. And each state, we have our own rights and powers that we retained when we joined the union, when we joined the federal government. So these kinds of layers are meant to protect us. And really what they're doing is they're forcing a collaboration where not everybody has all the power, but we kind of not even like work together. There's a system of, for example, say a Supreme Court rules in a way that you don't like, either on the state level or on the national level. It really doesn't even end there. If the country doesn't like that, it goes to the legislature. And we've seen that happen many times. The legislature says, whoa, that's not what we wanted. And they'll amend the law, and then the cycle begins again. So that system is meant to protect us. I think that it does jeopardize the system when we have someone who's trying to gobble up more power for their branch, and particularly the executive branch, because of the history of a tyrannical, federal power, if you will, in the king, right? That's how our country was founded. So I think that's really what's going on. And the cool thing is that each little state, like Vermont, has a critical role to play because our system asks that of us. We have a federal system. We are a sovereign state with our own powers. And as the Attorney General of this state, it is my job to bring Vermont into court to uphold that system and uphold the rule of law.
What gives you hope, Attorney General, as we kind of finish out this interview? What gives you hope? We mentioned it in the beginning that you really started off strong with optimism and hope. So kind of attached on to that last question, what gives you hope, and what should Vermonters look for in the months ahead?
Well, I would say what gives me hope is like I said, I really am a patriot. I believe in our country. I have a lot of faith that this is going to be a bumpy patch, but we will survive. We will come out stronger for it. And it's nice to have this moment to remember how powerful we are and how special our systems are of democracy. So I feel obligated to make a joke about my name, Faith, Hope, and Charity. So maybe that's part of why faith and hope are always right there with me. But I really do have a lot of hope for the country. But I will say it takes all of us to don't look away, read the newspapers, connect with your neighbors, go to a protest if it moves you, or make your voice heard in some way. keep educating yourself, keep reading, and keep showing up for each other. I think that's something that's really important. When you see people standing up for each other, it gives you hope and makes you feel good. And I think that's another reason why we got to keep doing that as well. This is probably going to be a bumpy patch here, but we will get through it and we'll do it together.
Attorney General Charity Clark, thank you so much for joining us on the Chamber Telecast today.
Thanks for having me.
As this turbulent chapter in American democracy continues to unfold, one principle stands as both a compass and a safeguard: the rule of law. It is easy to forget, amid the headlines, lawsuits, and executive orders, that the law is not just about policies or politics. It is the architecture of our freedom. The rule of law ensures that no one, no president, no agency, no ideology is above the Constitution and its people. It guarantees that the rights are not rationed by popularity and that justice is not delayed because it's inconvenient. Here in Vermont, we're lucky to be led by public servants like Attorney General Charity Clark, who understand that when Washington wavers, the state must stand firm. Whether defending disaster relief for rural towns, protecting the rights of immigrant families, or pushing back against overreach with resolve and reason, her office reminds us that Vermont does not flinch when the stakes are high. This is not a moment for passive citizenship, as she mentions. This is a time for informed resistance, for holding power to its promises, for remembering that defending the vulnerable is not just virtuous, it's vital to the integrity of our democracy. The road ahead is long, but Vermonters have always punched a little bit above our weight. Our history is one principled in dissent, civic backbone, and moral clarity. From the Green Mountain Boys to being the first state to abolish slavery, to pioneering civil unions, to leading the nation on climate action and environmental stewardship. The legacy lives on in our courthouses, our classrooms, and yes, at our Attorney General's office. So, as we close, I invite each of us to take stock of what we stand for, of the country we want to hand our children, and of the small but mighty role Vermont will play in preserving liberty under law. Thank you, as always, to CAT TV and the production team led by Mike Cutler. To our viewers, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected. I'm Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast.